A special thanks to my Patreon supporters. People who have had weird/creepy, unexplainable things happen to you. What happened? Long story, but I will shorten it. Was in a forest with a friend of mine at night. We heard what sounded like a large metal door slamming. It was not a gunshot or a train. It sounded like a rusty metal door that kept slamming shut. My friend recorded the noise. On our way out the forest, we got lost. The path and forest seemed to keep changing around us. Suddenly we hear something crashing through the trees. No idea what it was, but it must have been massive based on the noise. The sound was closing in on our location. My friend started running, so, of course, I started running too. We eventually found our way out of the forest and back to my parked car. Upon listening to the recording my friend took, there was no slamming noise. It was a woman screaming. I got a phone call once from the police saying that a man under the name Robert M. arrested and in custody. I was his one call. They said my name and address and asked if it was me. All information was correct. I informed the police officer that I do not know who this man is, after which the conversation ended. Thought it was a prank or something, but couldn't let go, so went by the police station a couple of days later and told them the situation. Comes out that there was a man arrested for assault with all of my personal details, including my number, asking to talk to me. To this day I don't know who he is or how he knew everything about me. This one was not very scary, a little weird, but not scary. One time, about 10 years ago, when I was 25/26 Y/0, I was studying away from home and living alone, and every day I had to go to bed early because my classes started early in the morning. One night I was trying to get to sleep and I heard someone whisper, "Go to sleep." Until today I still laugh about it. Edit, I was not high, drunk, and the TV was off. I was staying in a hotel. It was about 10 p.m., and I wanted some ice for my soda. So I decided to go 2 floors down to the ice machine. I went into the hall and pushed the elevator button. As the elevator was coming up, I heard 2 women laughing together, so naturally, I backed up expecting them to come out. I could tell they were on the elevator because as it got higher, the laughing got louder. The elevator dinged, and the doors opened, to absolutely nothing. It was dead silent and the air in the hall became cold. Had to be at least a 20-degree temperature drop. I took the stairs. Not me, but my mom. She always said that when she was pregnant with me, she was visited by an angel who came in the window, sat on the edge of the bed and left after few moments. I assumed a tiny cherub thing or a source of light or something, and the story always made me feel special as a kid. One day, we're talking to my grandma and aunt, and she goes into detail. Apparently, it was a dark figure with long appendages and swirling shadows around it, and somehow my mom picked up angel from that. Now I'm 2% certain I'm the Antichrist. I used to live in an old private school turned into lofts. It was old and well maintained and perfect Ouija board fodder for late night hangouts. One night after chilling with some friends and doing Ouija board, I was heading to bed and just doing a last check on the front door lock, which was in the front of the loft next to the kitchen. As I entered my bedroom, I heard a very calm male voice come from the living room say, "Please wait." I was terrified, but I stopped, turned to the living room and said, "I am waiting, what do you want?" Then I heard the spoon holder on the stove scrape across the metal top. I walked over to the stove and noticed the oven had been left on. I turned it off and even said, "Wow, thank you." The next day I was preheating the oven to make a pie. I came back into the kitchen and the oven was a huge fire from grease on the bottom. I had to use a fire extinguisher to put it out. I immediately realized I almost went to bed with a fire about to start blocking my only way out of the loft. Side note, my favorite theory is that the ghost of custodian had said please wait because when we would play with the Ouija we often heard the jangle of a set of keys coming down the hallway. TLDR, a ghost voice prevented me from going to sleep so that I could stop a fire inside my apartment. This just happened to my girlfriend and I a week ago. I am still trying to think up an explanation for it, but I have yet to have a reasonable one. We were on vacation in the Great Smoky Mountains. We were on an 8-mile round-trip hike. It was a rainy, dreary day, so the Smokies were extra smoky, especially at the elevation we were at. Most of the hike was pretty deep in the woods, pretty thick forest, so it was relatively dark. Add on the fog and it's beautiful, but a bit creepy. This is actually a picture I found online of the trail we walked, so imagine this, but more fog near the tops of the trees. Because of the weather, we hadn't seen many people on this hike at all, and at points we questioned if we were even going in the right direction. We come to a small hill we are walking up and I see a person about 50 to 100 yards away. I couldn't tell if it was a girl or guy, but they had a black rain jacket on and were coming down this small incline we were walking up. I was relieved because I was going to ask them if we were going in the right direction and how much farther. I turn to my girlfriend behind me and say, "There is somebody. We will ask them." I'm looking down as we walk up over some thick roots and look up to greet the hiker and ask them about the rest of the trail. Except there is nobody there. I get up to the point where I saw the person and am looking all around thinking they might have walked off the trail or something. I don't see anything. I thought maybe they were actually walking in the same direction as us and were over the hill. Nope. I'm looking all around in every direction trying to find any sign of where this person went. I didn't say anything else to my girlfriend because we had miles of hike left and she made it clear being out in the woods alone creeped her out, so I didn't want to scare her. Every corner we came around I hoped that I would see a guy in a black rain jacket walking up the trail, so I had some explanation for where this person went. She was out of my sight for 5 seconds and vanished. After that, the only people we saw on the trail was a family of 3. On the way back through I paid really close attention to the area where we saw him, her. I was looking for any stump, rock, or tree that could have possibly looked like a person from a distance that could justify what I saw. Nothing. After we got back to the car and were driving to our hotel, my curiosity got the best of me. I turned to my girlfriend and said, "Did you see?" She cut me off, "That person on the trail?" "Yeah, I did. Where the hell did they go?" I was glad she saw it too and I wasn't crazy. She said she looked up when I said something and clearly saw a person and then saw me looking all around trying to figure out where she went. I'm pretty skeptical when it comes to the whole paranormal stuff, and I'm not saying that is what this is, I just have no explanation. I have one for this. 4 years ago, I lived in a very large farmhouse that was converted into 2 apartments. The house was known as the Old Boys' Home. It was used to house boys with behavioral issues but was closed due to allegations of molestation. Anyway, I was living with my boyfriend and 3-year-old daughter at the time. My bedroom had a large fireplace that had been boarded up and painted over. I decided to push my bed up against it one day while I was rearranging things. It was like a headboard. That night, around 1 a.m. I had heard a small voice saying, "Mom, Mom, Mommy." I had sat up in bed but didn't see anything, so I reached over my boyfriend trying to grab my daughter and put her in our bed. I kept feeling around and I was still hearing the voice, but I couldn't feel her. My boyfriend woke up and turned the bedside lamp on, asking me, "What the hell are you doing?" I explained that Amelia was trying to get in our bed and I was reaching for her. There was nobody there. My daughter was sound asleep in her room. Then the next night came. Around 1 a.m. again my dog had started to whimper at outdoors, so my boyfriend got up to take him outside. You know that feeling in a bed when someone lies down next to you? Where the bed pushes in and there is a warmth in your back. I felt that, so I assumed my boyfriend had come back to bed. I rolled over, my boyfriend wasn't in the bed, and I felt the fucking bed release pressure. Whatever was laying next to me has gotten up in that second. I moved my bed the next day to the other side of the room and I never had another incident in the 2 years I remained in that house. When I was younger I worked at a fast food restaurant. My manager left to go have a smoke, like she usually did around the end of my shift. It was slow and I was cleaning and waiting for orders. I remember this Mexican pop song I really liked coming on over the radio. It was called Gasolina or something. This bald man came in, ordered a drink, got it and left. About 5 minutes later, the same song came on. I said to myself, huh, that's weird. The same bald man came in. I said, back so soon. He gave me a strange look. He ordered a drink, paid, and left. I suddenly felt dread. I felt really dizzy as sick. The song came on again and I went outside to find my manager to tell her I wanted to go home. She was still finishing her smoke. I told her it was really slow and I didn't feel good. She looked at me weird and came in. I finally have one for this. I occasionally get 2 auditory hallucinations which are explainable. One is a man saying, "Hey," right in my ear. The other is the apartment buzzer ringing at around 3 a.m. About a month ago, my apt buzzer goes off at 3 a.m. Many times, I get out of bed, my so is now also awake. I pick up the intercom, no one is there. A week ago, I was having trouble sleeping. I was getting pissed, I had to be up early and I was wide awake trying to find a position that worked. My so wakes up and says, "What?" I said, "Nothing, go back to sleep." He persists, "What happened?" Me, "Nothing." Him, "They, why did you just say, 'Hey,' in my ear?" He heard my voice say it, I always heard it in a man's voice. Creeped me out. In college I was working alone one night in the media lab, which was in the basement of one of the supposedly haunted dorm buildings. The only thing plugged into the speakers was my laptop, which was playing music through iTunes. All of a sudden, there was a short, very shrill laughter that blared out from the speakers. It wasn't the song, and again, I had nothing else open on my laptop. 15 years ago I was house sitting with a very sick friend whose wife was at work. He had been sick for a while and friends and family took turns caring for him. On this particular day he was mostly paralyzed, couldn't speak and had that death rattle sound when he breathed. He could move his eyes, but that was about it. So he's in bed and I'm sitting next to him watching TV when there is a knock at the door. Greeting me were 2 Hispanic females about 5 foot tall, dressed casually. I really couldn't tell how old they were. They could have been 30 or 60. Their hair was perfect and their skin was flawless. They both had lovely smiles and one spoke and explained they were from the hospice and there to clean him up. So I let them in and they start giving him a sponge bath. Then he gets a haircut and a shave. While they were doing all this they mentioned something about life. Life is good, isn't it, Mr. Klein? Yes, life is good. I noticed he is staring at me with this intense look of fear in his eyes. I smile at him and he slowly falls asleep. The ladies finish dressing him and I walk them to their car and thank them for being so kind. His wife arrives a few hours later and he is still sleeping. She is surprised to see him looking so clean-cut and I explain to her that the hospice nurses came by. She looks at me confused and says, "We can't afford insurance and don't have hospice, that's why friends and family are caring for him while I'm away. There is nothing we can do but look at each other. There is no one to call to verify who the hell just came over to clean up Mr. Klein." I left her there with her husband and pondered the question all the way home. I live about 30 minutes away. By the time I got home Mrs. Klein calls to inform me that Mr. Klein just passed. I just sat there and cried because I have no doubt that those ladies were angels. I was sitting right next to angels while my friend had the look of terror in his eyes because he knew who they were and that this was the end. Life is good, isn't it? Yes, life is good. A couple of months ago I had a dream that woke me up at exactly 3:42 a.m. I hardly ever dream, and if I do I don't remember them, so this was very unusual. In my dream, some sort of demonic force was attacking my father and youngest brother. Not physically attacking as in hitting or punching, but making them really sick. In my dream they were vomiting this black stuff and my dad died in about 2 days, with my brother becoming deadly ill about the same time. Super weird, and I woke up feeling a little creeped out. But not anything too intense, so I didn't think much about it. That morning I was talking with my mom and she mentioned waking up at exactly 3:42 a.m. and having a really intense feeling that she needed to pray for God to protect my dad and youngest brother. At this point I hadn't mentioned anything about my dream at all, so I know that she wasn't making it up. It's possible that it's a total coincidence, but I couldn't really explain it. Probably will get buried, but oh well. Obligatory sorry for the format, mobile and all. I tried to kill myself a few years back. I'll start by saying I don't feel that desire anymore. But I tried to OD myself with pills and booze. As I was slipping under, I saw this entity that has hair of fire, eyes of emerald and skin of alabaster. All she said was it is going to be alright, with the saddest look on her beautiful face. Now I'd taken enough to literally kill an elephant. Well, I wake up hours later. No hangover, no nothing. I had even spoke with the police and was completely coherent to them. Weird part is after I told my mom about this being, she knew her. My parents couldn't afford me when they were young and decided they needed to abort me. I was the third child, so my mom knew she was pregnant. The office needed to do a test, of course. Well, 2 tests came back negative, but while she was waiting, a red-headed green-eyed nurse came up to her and told her that it was gonna be okay. That she was gonna have a beautiful boy. After the tests came back, Ahe asked after the nurse and Quest told no one like that worked at the clinic. In labor, I had an umbilical noose. No one knew it yet, however. In the waiting room with my vitals dropping every pulse, the same nurse walked up and said all was okay and that I'd be fine. 26 years later here I am. I'm not religious, but damn if it doesn't beg a few questions. Was many years ago in high school, my parents and my brother went out to eat, but I didn't want to go, so I stayed home alone to play games on the computer. It is dark outside and they have been gone for a while when I start getting this uneasy feeling. I turned the volume down on my game and I could hear a voice coming from down the hall. It sounded like a man talking backwards, which was heard often in this house, and it kept getting louder and then softer, louder then softer, again and again. As I am staring out of the computer room into the darkness of my house, I hear a loud distorted scream/other noises erupt for about 2 seconds, and it made me jump out of my chair and my heart was racing. This loud scream came from my room though, which was upstairs and in the opposite direction of the voice I heard before. I could hear something thrash around for about 5 seconds before I called my parents, freaking out and telling them to get home. They told me to stay in the room until they got home. They had just paid for their meal, so they were about 15 minutes away from being home. When they finally arrived, we went upstairs and all of me and my brother's shit was spread around the room. Looked like someone went through all of our stuff, and my stereo was turned on but was at a low volume, and the TV had been turned on as well. All the windows had been shut and were locked, so it wasn't the wind. My parents didn't really see anything wrong with this, but my brother was freaked out too since we both slept in that room. There's a cemetery near my house that is right beside a pretty busy road. About 9 years ago I was driving by with my best friend. We were both in the back seat. I was on the side of the cemetery. There are 2-3 graves that are super off to the side. The graves are really old, some are falling down the ravine into the ponds which is on the other side, some are just stacked on top of each other. Those ones are mostly children's. Anyways, while driving by, which takes a good couple seconds, enough to look and observe, I saw a little girl, with long brown hair with a big red bow on top. She had on a white and red frilly-proofy dresses. It was one of the dresses that puffed out at the hips. She was skipping in circles around one of the off-to-the-side graves. I noticed the red from afar, and cried out for my friend to look. I took my eyes off her for honestly 0.5 seconds, and when we both looked, she was gone. There's no shrubbery or anything that she could have hidden behind. It's a wide open cemetery. Not the spookiest, but for sure stayed with me.